Cesar Santos was kind enough to send me his drawing DVD. I just finished watching it, and so this is going to be a review on it. So here's the front, the back, and there's 4 discs in it. It says that it's 17.9 hours long, and it spans 4 days with Cesar Santos while he makes this finished figure drawing. And then there's some other extras in it as well. So disc 1, there is day 1, which is about 3 hours long, and he starts off by going over all of his drawing materials that he's going to be using. So he uses sandpaper for sharpening the charcoal, he uses Nitram charcoal, compressed charcoal, a smooth sponge for drawing, a sand block for drawing, black mirror stumps, a knitting needle for measuring, brushes for drawing with, kneaded eraser, sanding eraser, a maul stick, and a plumb line. And the paper that he uses for his demonstration is Stonehenge paper, but he also goes over that he uses a lot of different other papers too. It's not just Stonehenge to make his drawings, but the one that he does for this demonstration is Stonehenge. And then he goes over the model that he's drawing, and so he makes this figure drawing by using a photo reference. And he talks about the pros and cons of using a photo reference versus pros and cons of using a live model. And he shows you how he took the photo of the model and gives advice about how you can take a photo to get the least amount of distortion for making a drawing or a painting out of it. He also goes over, he shows you the different photos that he's taken and talks about how he uses more than one, so he's not just using just one photo that he has to be dependent on. And then he shows his dominant photo that he's going to be using and explains why he thinks that one is the best. And then he also gives some advice on posing the model and lighting the model. And so for the rest of the DVD series, it's pretty split. So you have the photo of the model for a part of the screen, and then the other part is him working on the drawing, which is nice. So you can see both in how he's breaking up the model into different value tones and lines and all that, so you can see and be comparing from the photo reference to what he's working on at the same time. And then he starts drawing, and he starts off by making this little gesture version that you can see in the upper right hand corner. And so he just makes a simple line drawing and explains he's saying is explaining his thought process of what he's going to be doing to make the larger figure. So a simple line drawing, and then he explains quickly how you can design a value structure. And so you can see that on the line drawing as the value kind of zigzags down the figure. And then he starts working on the big figure drawing, and it seems like he's using comparative measuring. He uses his knitting needle to take measurements and gives advice on how you can be doing that. And he starts off with a very basic line drawing, getting the very basic measurements. It's like as few lines as possible to make up the pose. And then he goes over it a second time and kind of circles around, and he's breaking the lines up and getting them more specific. And then he goes over it again and breaks the lines up even more. And this time when he's doing it, he's also showing how when you're making lines, how you can be making overlapping lines to make the silhouette of everything more specific based on the muscle structure and skeleton structure that's making up the body. So it's interesting seeing how he's doing this, working from a photo reference. You see that he has a really good understanding of how the model is built up, muscular and skeletal wise. So he will really lightly draw in basic muscle shapes where it's affecting the outline of the figure, and explains how he's doing that. And in this stage too, he's also varying up his line quality and showing what are active and passive lines, and how you can change up your line quality to show the difference between the two. And also he is varying up his lines also if something is in the shadows, rather something's more in the light shape of the figure. And then he shows these preliminary drawings that he has made. So you can see them back here, and he goes over this one right here. So it has the model that is in the same pose, but it's made up of the muscles, and another one that's made up of the skeleton. Day 2, part 1, he starts off with a fresh eye, and so he makes corrections in the line drawing. And as he's making those corrections, he's saying why he's seeing them as an error and how he can improve upon them. And then he starts laying in the values, and he starts with the hair, then moves on to the face and to the neck. Day 2, part 2 is about 45 minutes long, and again, he starts by correcting things that he had been doing previously in the head, hair, and neck, and makes corrections and explains how and why he is doing that, and then he starts adding the values down the straight arm. Then day 2, part 3 is about 3.5 hours long, and again, he starts off by correcting things that he sees he can correct, and then he adds the values everywhere else on the figure except for the hand. And for the straight leg, it's the lower leg and the foot are left unfinished. Day 3, part 1 is about an hour long, and he finishes up the rest of the drawing, so the hands, the lower leg, and the foot, so then the whole drawing now has the same level of finish on it. And then there's a chapter on the DVD for preliminary studies, and that's about 15 minutes long, and so you can see them all back here. So he has one of the muscles, the skeleton, the model made up of basic planes, and then the model made up of a simple value rhythm. And there's one that you can't see because it's cut off in the photo, but he also did another one where it's the model made up in a painting sketch. And so he goes over each of them and talks about the main muscles that you're seeing. And for the muscle drawing, what he does when he's talking about the muscles, and it's a little bit of an anatomy lesson, is he will take charcoal and draw over it. So for the example, for the stomach area on the model, when he is showing that in the muscle sketch, what he'll do is he'll talk about the muscles, and then he takes charcoal and kind of sketches over it, this like a simple plane of how the values are hitting it. So you're kind of getting a sense of how skin is being stretched over the muscles and the bones. And while he's doing this, it's really interesting that he's doing this, and I think it's a good idea to have these preliminary sketches if you're using photo reference, because you can see that he really does have he's worked out the muscles and the bones to have a really good understanding of the way that the forms are acting on the model. His drawing seems to have more volume to it than the actual photo reference, and that has to be because of all these preliminary studies and his understanding for structure, that he can pull those out where he sees necessary that you can't necessarily see so well in the photo reference. Okay, day 3, part 2 is about 3 hours long, and he explains that he's going to go over the entire drawing again. Now that he has all the values laid in, he can start judging things off of each other. And to do that, he shows you how to use a black mirror and how that compresses value groups and how you can use that to help make sure all your value relationships are working together. And so he again starts with the hair, and it works his way down to the torso. Day 3, part 3 is about 40 minutes long, and he finishes up the torso and starts working around the pelvis. And day 4 is about 2.5 hours long, and so this he works the rest of the way down the figure, and then he goes back around the figure and makes any final touches that he sees he can does. And he explains also for areas in the photo that he sees, while he won't add certain things to the drawing, and vice versa, that things that aren't clearly seen in the photograph, how he adds things to the drawing, and he talks about why he does that. And then Eric Rhodes gives Cesar Santos an interview, which is about an hour long, and this is really interesting. It talks about, or Cesar and him talk about how it was like for him growing up in Cuba and what it was like leaving and coming to the United States, and talks about his education and his introduction to art and what it was like for him going to the Florence Academy of Art and kind of what that teaching style is like. And then talking about also his mindset and approach to art. And then on this, there's a high-speed version of him making the whole drawing. Cesar Santos has that posted up on his YouTube channel, so you can see that, which is cool because if you're thinking about purchasing, you can see a really sped up version of how he finishes the drawing. So I'll put a link for Cesar Santos's video in the description box. And then finally, there's a 4-minute exhibit of Cesar Santos's work, and it's presented like a slideshow, and it's groups of his drawings and paintings. Okay, so the whole DVD package is 17.9 hours long, and you really do see everything that he does. The camera angles are really nice with showing, like I said, having this split screen where you see the model and the drawing so you can compare and see how he's breaking things up into a drawing. It also zooms in a lot, and so you get close-ups of what he's doing, or you see like the full paper of it. So you really do get to see every brush or drawing stroke that he's putting down and all the tools that he's using. So they do a really good job with that. One thing that I really like about this is that you continuously see him going back over and correcting things, and when he says he sees a drawing error that he did or how he could make something better, he talks about why how he sees that and how he thinks he can make it better, and then he shows you how you're doing it. So I think that's a really realistic way to approach drawing as well. Also, how he's doing this is how he makes up this drawing. It's a very systematic approach that makes a lot of sense. So it is really easy to follow along with. And again, all the way through drawing, he is talking about what he's doing, art in general, and mindsets. And it does seem like his commentary is more geared towards the beginner or someone that hasn't had classical training. However, I'm about to finish my atelier training, and I've never seen someone use a sponge for drawing before, and I've never used one before, so I thought it was really worthwhile to see someone get a drawing like this with using different tools that I'm not used to, like a sanding eraser, drawing with a sponge, and then also drawing with a sanding block. So those are interesting things that were new for me that I definitely learned a lot from. And then also with him talking about how, if you're using a photo reference, how to best go about doing that to get a nice drawing out of it that's not going to look too flat or static, with using preliminary drawings, and then his advice for actually taking the photo. I found that very interesting and helpful as well. So this video is through Streamline, and it looks like it's $187. So if anyone's interested in purchasing this, I'll put a link up also in my description box where you can go to Streamline's website to order this if you'd like. And I think you can either buy the physical copy, or it looks like a digital download as well. But I think they're the same price for $187, I think. If you want to get this, I'll have a link in the description box.